Online for Authors. I'm chatting with Ellis Shuman, author of Rakiya, Stories of Bulgaria. Welcome, Ellis.
Hello, thank you for having me. It's great to be here.
I'm really excited to have you. Can you give our listeners just a quick idea of what they're going to find when they open up the cover of your book?
Rakiya, Stories of Bulgaria, is a collection of short stories, all of them set in Bulgaria. It's 12 short stories, some of them told in the voices of native Bulgarians, some of them told in the voices or experiences of foreigners, people coming to visit and live in Bulgaria for the first time.
Right, and I really enjoyed them. One of my questions is, why stories in Bulgaria? Most people don't know Bulgaria, have never visited Bulgaria, wouldn't have it on their list. What possessed you to say, hey, I think I'm going to do 12 short stories on Bulgaria?
Well, let me just introduce my background. I'm an American-born writer who lives in Israel. I've lived in Israel since the age of 15. My family is here. For 2 years of my life, my wife and I moved to Sofia, Bulgaria, because my job had been relocated to there, my job in online content editing and writing. Coming back to Israel, I still felt this strong affection, this strong connection to Bulgaria, and I realized I could express this in my writing. I wrote a lot of travel reports about visiting Bulgaria, but then I gravitated to fiction. I wanted to tell stories set in Bulgaria. I wrote 2 suspense novels set in Bulgaria. And then over the years, I've been writing short stories, and I managed to collect 12 of them set in Bulgaria into this book that came out, Rakiya, Stories of Bulgaria.
Right. And what I found really interesting about it was, like, I enjoyed the stories. I loved how they were connected, but I felt like Bulgaria was also a character, because as I read, I got to know the country. And it made me almost think, well, gee, should I have Bulgaria on my bucket list of countries to visit, which would have never been true just looking at a map.
Yes, for certain, I consider Bulgaria as one of the main characters of my book, even though it didn't have a voice, but it did have so much history, scenery, traditions, culture, that you couldn't help but get a little sense of that through my stories, through my fiction. Hopefully, it will end up on many people's future travel plans.
Right. I think that it was interesting because you brought up the scenery. There's a lot of mountains and beautiful hikes. You brought up like there are a number of churches and things that are like big and beautiful to go see, more than just a little chapel, something really large. You talked about the food. You talked about the drink. All of those things I just found very intriguing. When you lived in Bulgaria, like, what was your favorite thing to do?
My favorite thing was when we left the office and on weekends went out and traveled around the country, the countryside, the picturesque villages, the scenic mountains, even the seacoast on the Black Sea coast. There's so much history everywhere. Coming from Israel is a relatively dry country with a shortage of water. Bulgaria is exactly the opposite. So many forests, so much water, so much nature. And it was just so fascinating to get out into the country, to meet people, and learn about a country totally unlike anything we had experienced before.
Yeah, I can imagine that's true when you go to something that's so different from what you're used to. And then to be able to experience that. Have you been back since?
I have. We lived there for 2 years, 2009,
right.
2010. I've been back 3 times, including 1 week of hiking in Bulgarian mountains. That was a fascinating week of hiking. That's something I took, a challenge, and I would go back tomorrow if I could.
Would you? Right. And I'm curious a little bit about you, to go to Israel, to live in Israel. You said you moved there when you were 15. So obviously, your parents decided and you went along. But at some point you could have said, yeah, this isn't for me. I'm going back to the United States. What is it about Israel that has kept you there that makes this your home?
when I came to at age 15, obviously I didn't have too much of a choice.
Exactly.
Becoming an adult, serving 3 years in the Israeli army, my wife and I were founding members of a kibbutz, a collective Israeli agricultural settlement in the desert, turning the desert green, raising a family in Israel. You come to see that you're taking your role in building a new country. Israel is a fascinating place to live, so much history, religion, culture, traditions. And we just happen to live in a very hostile neighborhood, but this is our home. When we went to Bulgaria, it was a wonderful time, but we knew it was a temporary stay and we would be coming back home to the lives we built, to our family here in Israel.
Yeah. Yeah. You were telling me that we might have to be a little concerned that there could be like a missile attack. And I'm thinking, wow, to live in a place like that. And yet you don't look distraught or worried or anything. You look like, yeah, this is just, and for someone who lives on the coast of North Carolina, the thought of a missile attack, just like, I'm nervous for you right now. Like, and you seem to be fine with it.
Yeah, it's a challenge living here, but life goes on.
Right. Absolutely. So tell me what it is about short stories that attracts you, that makes you say, now this is what I prefer to write.
Well, as I said, I wrote 2 suspense novels set in Bulgaria. The first one was Valley of Thracians, which is set in modern day Bulgaria, but it deals with a period of ancient Bulgarian history. The Thracians ruled in that part of the world even before 4,000 years ago, even before the Romans. My second novel was the Burgas Affair, which dealt with a very real terrorist attack at Burgas, Bulgaria airport in 2012. But over the years, I saw that my true talent or true love for writing is in short fiction. I've been writing short stories all my life. I get more pleasure in doing something that you can sit down and start and complete very quickly. If it's not in one writing session, it could be a few writing sessions. A novel, when you start, you don't know if you're going to reach a satisfying finish line that completes a story, a plot, character development. Short stories, you can come up with an idea, a character, and doesn't actually have to have an ending that is conclusive. It could end, here's the story that I came to tell. It starts, it finishes, leaves the reader thinking about it, asking for more. And that's, over the years, I wrote a number of stories set in Bulgaria, and I collected them together to form this book, Rakiya, Stories of Bulgaria.
Absolutely. One of the things, I love writing short stories as well. I told you, I've talked with you in the past, but about the fact that it's kind of like a palate cleanser for me, because I do like to write the novel. But sometimes you're in the middle of this novel and you don't know where you're supposed to go next. And to be able to sit down and write something that you know is going to be complete rather quickly does have a really nice feel to it. I don't know what to do with them. Where do you find to put your short stories out into the world?
As a writer, it's more challenging to market one's writing. Exactly. Short stories, there are quite a number of online literary magazines, journals, blogs that in many cases they're very selective what they publish. I'm not even talking about sites that pay you. I'm just interested in getting my fiction out to readers in different parts of the reading world, to the parts of the world. So a lot of the time you take one short story and you could end up sending it to 30, 40, or even more magazines or online magazines and hoping one will say yes. It's a very difficult task. You have to have a really thick skin, because rejection after rejection, is someone going to appreciate what you write? All the stories in Rakiya, the 12 stories, did find their individual homes. It took a time, but each of them was published online before I collected them in the book. 12 different sites. It's not that they were all published on one site. And as I continue to write short stories, part of my day is writing and part of my day is trying to find places that will publish the stories that I've already written.
Right. And that idea of a thick skin, I think that's true being an author, regardless of what you're writing. Whether you're writing short stories, novels,
Absolutely.
poetry, I don't care what it is. If you don't have thick skin, you're going to cry a lot, because
Absolutely.
rejection is just the name of the game. It's like, no, we don't think so. And it's like, what do you mean you don't think so? It's perfect, right?
Yes.
Absolutely. Your first published work was also a collection of short stories, and those were about Israel. Does it have a similar flavor in that you see Israel from many different aspects in the same way that we did with this Rakiya?
My first book was the Virtual Kibbutz. Kibbutz, again, is a collective community, collective settlement. This was based on my 6 years, my wife and I lived on a kibbutz that we were founding members of this community. And I wanted to present this way of life to readers. So all of the stories in that book were around the theme of what it is to live and build a kibbutz in Israel. It's not about all different aspects of living in Israel, but only on this particular type of community. The kibbutz as a way of life has changed dramatically since the days when I wrote that book, but I was able to hopefully give readers an idea of what it was like to live on a kibbutz at that time.
Yeah, that sounds very fascinating. In fact, it makes me want to run out and grab that one too, and take a look and see what that's about. So I'm just curious, like, what does your writing life look like? I know that you work and you have another job, but how do you fit the writing in, and how does that look in terms of, where do you do it? How often do you do it? That kind of thing.
I'm a very early riser, and that's because I travel. I live outside Jerusalem, Israel. I travel to my job in Tel Aviv. My workday begins at 8:00, but an hour earlier at about 7, I'm sitting down in a coffee shop with my laptop, creative writing or creative marketing.
Right.
I get 1 hour of dedicated time to my writing passion before I even start my day job. When I come home at the end of my day, I'm too exhausted to even consider writing. On weekends, I tend to spend my time with my family. So before I start work, that's when I actually do something really creative.
Right. I love that you write in a coffee shop. What prompted you to do that versus in a quiet office someplace?
I don't know. It's just the idea of sitting with a cup of coffee, concentrating on my writing. I do not have music. I do not have earphones or anything. I can just fully concentrate on what's on the screen in front of me. I'll hear the coffee machine brewing coffee, but it's just white noise for me.
Yeah.
And I'm able to concentrate fully on what I'm doing. So that's how it's always been.
Yeah, the same works for me. I can have noise in the background. It doesn't bother me as long as the noise isn't about me. I have more trouble if I know that noise in the background means, oh, wait, someone's needing me.
Right.
I think that was the laundry. Is that, and then it's harder to concentrate. But in a place like a coffee shop or a library or a park or anything like that, I can sit, and those noises aren't about me. And so they just become part of my background. So I too like to write in a coffee shop. It's a wonderful place. Is there a favorite short story from Rakiya that is something that stands out to you?
All of the stories in the book take place in modern day Bulgaria. I've never been, and I do not aspire to be a writer of historical fiction. I don't know if I could ever pull that off. But for one story in the book, I did an immense amount of research, and that's because of something my wife and I learned when we arrived in Sofia, Bulgaria at the start of our 2-year period of my job's relocation. At that time it came as a total surprise to us to learn that Bulgaria, while aligned with the Nazis during World War II, did not lose any members of its 50,000 Jewish citizens during the war, meaning Bulgaria started World War II with 50,000 Jewish citizens, and it ended the war a number of years later, and its entire Jewish community was intact. This was unusual because all the other countries aligned with the Nazis, or countries that were overrun by the Nazis, their Jewish residents, their Jewish citizens were taken to the concentration camps to meet their deaths. But Bulgaria's Jews somehow survived. And the question, first of all, that was a total shock to us, but the question is, how did they survive? And I realized this was something I wanted to share with my readers. I am not capable of writing a nonfiction story of what happened during those years, but I wanted to express it in my fiction. I couldn't do it in the form of a novel. It's too big an undertaking, but I searched for a way to do it in my writing of a short story, and I think I succeeded. In Rakiya, Stories of Bulgaria, the longest story is the story called Forgiveness, and it takes place partially in the modern day. An Israeli man goes to Bulgaria to meet a Bulgarian war veteran who tells of his experiences during World War II. And it answered some of the questions, but hopefully it will raise more interest in this historical subject because I enjoyed the research, and hopefully I was able to share this unique story with my readers. So it's something a little bit different from the other stories in the book.
But I found it fascinating. As a historical fiction author, that was a piece. I always love it when I come across a historical fact, especially about something that's been written about over and over and over. World War II is, if you wanted to read nothing but World War II fiction, you could do that from now until the day you closed your eyes and then never. But that was a fact I had never heard. And like you said, for them to have been aligned with the Nazis and yet their Jewish population remained, I found that fascinating. Now, it doesn't mean that there were no problems, because there were work camps and there were things that happened, but they were never taken to the concentration camps, where the death camps. They just didn't go. They were not sent there. And I found that absolutely fascinating. You said that you did run into some difficulties with the history. Why is that?
Well, I did a lot of research for that book. I sat in libraries. I interviewed people. I talked to historians and journalists. When I say the Jews of Bulgaria survived the war, who should get the credit for saving them or ensuring their survival? And there's many conflicting opinions even today, whether it was the Bulgarian Tsar, the Bulgarian king, or politicians, or the Bulgarian Orthodox Church, who should be credited with this amazing rescue or tale of how Bulgarian Jews survived. Even today in Bulgaria, there are arguments over who should get this credit.
Who gets the credit?
Yeah, I don't want to make a decision, but I do want to tell the story of this amazing story.
Exactly. I found that very interesting. I think another thing that I found interesting was the very first story, which I think is probably where you got the title, which is Rakiya. Why don't you explain what that is, what the title is, where it came from, and then a little bit about that first story.
Well, in the book, I've hopefully introduced readers to a little bit about Bulgarian cuisine, yes, the things that people eat in Bulgaria, but also I wanted to share Rakiya, which is an alcoholic drink, which I think you can consider it's Bulgaria's national alcoholic drink. It's very potent, very strong, high alcoholic content. And it's even more potent when it's homemade. Rakiya is made by people in villages, even in the city. They make it in their basements, in their cellars, in their backyards. It can be made of grapes or apricots or different kinds of fruit. And I envisioned a competition between residents of a village, a mountain village in Bulgaria, who are competing to see who can make the best homemade rakiya, this highly potent alcoholic drink. So my connection to rakiya started when I first had it's like something you raise a toast to each other at the start of a meal in Bulgaria. You raise a glass and say, to your health, na zdrave, and you drink it. And the first time I had a drink of rakiya, I said, oh, this doesn't affect me. It's fine. Then I stood up and tried to walk across the floor, and I found that it was not stable at all. But over the 2 years of living in Bulgaria, drinking rakiya, I came to have a liking for the drink. I haven't had it since I've been back home in Israel. So that's the first story of the book. The book is not only about alcohol and not only about Bulgarian food and customs, but I felt that was a good way to introduce readers to a little bit of what it's like to actually live in Bulgaria.
Absolutely. And I found that fascinating as well. My grandfather made homemade wine. I live in the South in the United States, where a lot of people made, homemade, they called it white lightning, homemade whiskey, which was definitely a higher potency than anything that you can buy in the store. And so I just found it interesting. And I suspect that's true of a lot of countries, that there are things that are made at home that have become a tradition that people are just used to drinking, and that as a foreigner who steps in and tries it, it'll knock their socks completely off, right?
That's for sure.
Absolutely. I'm curious, you said it was made of different fruits. Was there one in particular that you liked more, that was made of a particular fruit that was better, or did you not ever come to that conclusion?
If you ask me, I probably couldn't tell the difference if it was
really
plum or grapes. It knocks you out. So
I love that. I love that. So characters, you had a lot of characters that came up once and some that came up in different locations. Was there a character of yours that was a favorite? Someone you enjoyed writing about the most?
I don't think I had a particularly favorite of the characters, but I think readers will find my voice more in the stories that deal with people coming to visit or live in Bulgaria and experience Bulgaria for the first time. I was a little bit worried about the stories that came from the side of native-born Bulgarians. Was I doing justice to Bulgarians by speaking in their name, in their voices? My first novel, when I highlighted some of the Bulgarian characters, my readers in Bulgaria said, you've brought Bulgaria to the attention of readers who don't know anything about Bulgaria. So they were very appreciative of my using Bulgarian characters that were not exactly stereotypes of what people might envision certain. I don't even want to mention what kind of stereotypes people might think of Bulgarians, but I tried to bring them as real human beings with their day-to-day concerns and thoughts, but I think my characters identify more with me when I use them as visiting, experience Bulgaria for the first time. So whether one or others is a favorite, I can't say.
Can't really say. I kind of really enjoyed, which is amazing to me because I have no experience with this, but with the pickpocket character, the mother and daughter. So Roma, gypsy, whatever, however you wanted to term them. And I have zero experience. I don't believe I've even met anyone that would be in that category of people, but there was something about that one. And maybe it's because I'm a mom and I saw her both be tough, like she's supposed to be because she's out pickpocketing and that's what her life requires. And yet I also saw her be a mother and be concerned and worried and those things. And so I found that to be a really good character.
Well, living in Sofia, you couldn't help but see that there's certain people on the streets who are related to differently, second-class citizens, right, or even less. And my wife was pickpocketed 2 times in Sofia, so we did experience that. I try to give some humanity to these characters. Yes, we had an experience where a young girl came up to my wife and offered her the purse that she had just pickpocketed and asked us for money to regain that purse even after she had taken the money
from it.
So that does exist, but I wanted to see what it would be like for that girl and her mother to raise that kind of girl on the streets of Sofia, Bulgaria. I hope I did it respectfully, because I know not everyone relates to these characters or
right,
real life people respectfully. And you mentioned whether they should be called gypsies or Roma. I mean, I try to be politically correct, but there's a lot of slang used against them.
Yes, absolutely.
And I try to be careful of how I describe them in my stories.
Well, and I thought you did a really good job, because I believe that you gave a good description of what their life was like and what people think of them, but you also showed that they're human, that right, they may have this label and they may not be seen as much in their country, but they have the same goals in a lot of sense that everyone has, which is to be happy and healthy and be able to pay their bills and keep a roof over their head and to love their families and all of those things that do happen, even if you're not living in a situation that other people look at and say, no, that's ideal, or that's what I would like. Absolutely. So I enjoyed that story. Yeah. What do you hope readers are going to gain from having read Rakiya?
Well, hopefully they will enjoy the entertaining part of my fiction, that they've read stories and it's either given them a satisfactory ending or not. Maybe it will lead them to think a little bit about the characters and where they were going or where they will go next. But as Bulgaria is the main theme that connects all of them together, hopefully it will raise awareness of this country in Southeastern Europe that rarely makes it into the news. Maybe that's a good thing.
Maybe.
But it also could be a possible travel destination for people willing to take on an adventure, to go off the beaten path. It's a beautiful country. The people are very hospitable. They're very open to welcoming people into their home, into their homeland. There's so much to see and so much to learn. Even after living there for 2 years, even after coming back for 3 visits, there's so much I didn't see that I would want to see. If a reader will come away from the book and will say, wait a minute, maybe I should go there. I've never even considered it in the past, then maybe my book has successfully introduced them to this new travel destination possibility.
Well, Ellis, it did it for me, because that's exactly what I thought this has never been on my list before. I want to do a little more research and see, is this something that would be possible? Would it be something that I would consider? So you did your job, if that's what you're hoping for. So, hey guys, if you want to keep this conversation going, head on over to Novels and Latte Book Club on Facebook. There you're going to have a chance to win a digital copy of Rakiya, Stories of Bulgaria. Just look for the post, tell us something you liked or learned, and you will be in the drawing. So Ellis, if someone wanted to get up with you, talk with you about your time in Bulgaria, talk with you about Israel, talk with you about writing, how do they do that? How do they reach you?
Well, I'm very open to telling people about my experiences, to give some advice. I can't say I can give you exact travel costs today, but I invite people to visit my blog. It's ellisshuman.blogspot.com. You can contact me through my email there, listed there. You can visit my author page on Facebook. Feel free to contact me, and I will be glad to give advice and answer questions for sure.
Fabulous, fabulous. And I'll have all of those links in the show notes, so just head right there. And Ellis, I want to thank you so much for being with me today. It's been wonderful.
It's been a pleasure talking to you, and I hope some of your readers and viewers might consider reading the books.
Thank you for listening to Online for Authors, where I, Terry M. Brown, author of character-driven fiction and host of the podcast, introduce readers to characters they'd love to invite to lunch. Tune in next Tuesday for another podcast episode.